And we're live. What's up, Kingdom of Rock? This is Matt Gibson with yet another exciting episode amidst this global pandemic that we call the COVID-19 crisis. I don't know if we call it that, but that's what I've heard it called that. But I'm here today with Michael Molenda, as usual. How's it going, Mike?
Good. Everything's awesome.
Awesome. San Francisco sunny today. It looks like the weather window is
the weather window
good.
Is bright and sunny. Yes.
That's good. That's good. And we're here today with the Vice President of Marketing for CD Baby, guitars for the Small Town Poets, Mr. Kevin Breuner. How's it going, brother?
It's going well. Doing well. And it's actually, even though it doesn't look like on my screen here, it's actually very sunny in the Portland area today.
Oregon.
We don't believe that.
That's just snow. There's snow up to the top of his house, right?
Yeah.
So how have you been, brother? It's Kevin was one of my first guests on the show. He was on the first season. That was about, oh my gosh, like maybe 5 years ago.
Yeah, it's been a while. Yeah. Things are going well. We've been super busy at CD Baby. Artists are releasing music like crazy. And it's also been, trying to make the best of it with my band. We've been working on a lot of new tracks and making videos. And I've been screwing around making videos by myself as well, doing some guitar stuff. And so it's going well. The one thing I can say is, I really miss normal life, but I've found some extra room for creativity in the simplicity we find ourselves in.
Well, I think that's a wonderful and inspirational thing to say, because we don't always want to go where musicians, our livelihoods have been decimated. Let's cry in a corner somewhere. So and I also appreciate a lot of what CD Baby has been doing to put out a lot of, as a journalist, the data about,
Mm-hmm.
Your newsletters and things like that always have these tips for how to, create, how to record, how to write songs, how to get together. All that stuff is really awesome.
Yeah. And, there is that element that a lot of artists are hurting, but I think, well, in the independent market, I think that independent artists have been sort of leading the charge anyway of doing new creative things online and connecting with people that in a way that doesn't necessarily require you to play live as much. And we've seen a lot of artists get even more innovative. So trying to stay positive and look at it as an opportunity to keep creating music, and hopefully we'll be through this soon.
Hopefully not COVID-19 positive though.
Yeah. No.
That reminds me of a South Park episode for some reason.
Well, it's interesting when Matt and I started and we had some, bigger artists on. The theme was kind of like, we don't know how long this is going to be because it was early days. We're not going to release our records because we want to tour behind them. What's the point of releasing the record without touring behind it? So I think it is interesting that, like you say, in indie world, tours might not have been a revenue provider like it would be for a bigger artist. And also, we would think, well, if everybody waits until November or the end of the summer to release their records, that's going to be crazy. So I think it's interesting that, your community really hasn't stopped releasing. But in your mind, what have been some of the most noticeable strategies for release that you've noticed?
Well, it was funny that first week of, when everything started shutting down, every artist, it seemed like, was doing a live stream. And I think there were some people that were sort of just tripping and falling into it. And then there's other people that have really provided some good strategies on how to make it more useful. For us, like some of the things we on our podcast, the DIY Musician Podcast, our last episode was titled "The Truth About Live Streaming," because there's some things that you can do online with video that don't require it to be live, and there's some cool new features that I think are popping up. A lot of the platforms are developing really fast. In fact, one I discovered because of what Radiohead was doing. It's like a band like Radiohead. It's like even if they're massive, but even if you're like Radiohead and that kind of instrumentation, it's hard to do a live stream without production, at least to mix the sound down so it's not a distorted mess on the internet. But what they started doing is taking old live concert footage and doing YouTube premieres. So they're making an event on YouTube around footage that already existed. And the cool thing is when you do that using that premiere, it's just a setting when you upload a video, you can schedule it for like Friday night. You can make have all your fans go there. And then whenever people jump in, everyone's watching at the exact same point. So it's not just like the video goes live. It's like for the first run through, everyone's watching the same place. So you can kind of, have a lot going on in the chats and things like that. So those are a lot of the interesting and innovative things I've seen pop up that are trying to use video or content that's already been created, but create an event around it. So it's special and still a reason for people to get together. And even if it is just the artist, chatting everybody up in the chats while we all watch together, those are just some of the cool things that are happening. And, I think it for a lot of artists who have been touring, a lot of the digital space has been neglected, not intentionally, like they don't see it as important, but you get busy and you realize, it's happened to me, you get busy and I realized, oh man, our YouTube page, I haven't updated that in forever. And so our website really needs to get updated with our latest releases. So I think for a lot of artists, it's been an opportunity to really do a lot of digital housekeeping and bring things up to work better for us on the web. So we're not trying to work so hard out in the real world and let the internet do more of the lifting for us.
Well, let me ask you this, Kevin. The last time you were on the show, one of the most interesting things that I remember we talked about was the idea that you guys know who's making money and who's not making money. And you probably know why they're making money and why they're not making money. But the world has changed in the last 5 years. Back then, people were selling albums. They were selling singles. They were doing things like that. And the revenue streams have, and I'm assuming, have changed significantly since that time. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think, it's definitely become a streaming world. That's the dominant format, whether, artists like it or not. That's where we're at. And there's some benefits to it and there's some downsides to it. And I think the other thing that's become more interesting to me is that there's a whole bunch more revenue starting to be unlocked just from digital usages. For example, we monetize artists' music on Instagram and Facebook. So when fans are uploading videos or stuff that they've recorded and post on Facebook or Instagram, we can get you paid for that. And not only that, and TikTok's a great example of this, is that these platforms are starting to integrate music in a way where people want to use your music to make content that they share that just helps your music go further. TikTok is based solely on, most of it is based solely on people like making videos that are reacting to something in the song, whether it's a dance or they're keying off a lyric. And all those things really just help push the music further because then it becomes interactive. So to me, one of the biggest benefits of what we've seen happen with music is it hasn't just been a product that somebody consumes. It's become a product that somebody can consume, take, and also do their interpretation of it in a way that benefits the artist. And so that's one of the great things. And, a lot of these platforms like Spotify actually are pushing music to more listeners. And, whether it's Release Radar, Discover Weekly, there's the whole playlist ecosystem, but those things are actually pushing music. Now, obviously, the more fans you have, the more that algorithm and engine is going to work on your behalf. But those are things that didn't exist in the CD world and in the same way. And so I think, for artists, there's just been a fundamental shift in how people engage with music. And that's what needs to be recognized, It's that it's not just that we went from people bought CDs, then they bought downloads, and now they just stream it. How the music is used and how people engage with it is completely shifted from a more like, I'm going to go get this CD, I'm going to stick it in and listen to it, to a situation where tracks can be flying by them all day long, and then they just hear one they like and start interacting with it, doing something with it. Or there's a lower barrier to just push the play button and see if you're going to like something.
Well, what if you, how do you counsel, because I think from an artist standpoint, whether it's an independent artist trying to, have a revenue stream through their art, or, a big artist trying to have a revenue stream through their art, the problem is we know with a lot of streaming is there's not a lot of revenue there, even if you're a big artist getting tons of streams. And now that touring is kind of out until possibly the end of the year, what are some of your thoughts for, it's great that everybody can, engage with music, but it doesn't really bring money into the artist per se. So what are some of the things that you and CD Baby would recommend with touring off the table that you could do to try to bring some pennies into your account?
I think, for starters, I think there's nothing wrong. If you were an artist that's been impacted negatively by the loss of tours, there's nothing wrong with reaching out to your fans and being honest about it. I think that's one thing that oftentimes artists, I don't know, they have a hard time asking for help sometimes. Yes, because some people will say, it sounds like we're begging. The same thing with, ever since the idea of fan-funded campaigns came up, you have some people like, this is amazing, we're, paying for all our albums, and other people saying, it sounds like we're begging, I can't stand doing this. So I think that's a starter. I think, understanding where there's opportunities to maybe provide content, like subscription services are great. Like Patreon, I think this is Patreon's time to shine. Bandcamp also has a subscription opportunity in it. If you've got a artist website through Bandzoogle, they have a commission-free subscription service that you can create new things for your fans and, have a subscription going. Like some of them are, pay what you want, $1 a month or whatever, or it could be $4 or whatever you want to make it. And that is a way, like if you've got content you can create, trying to encourage people, giving them opportunities to support you. Because I think a lot of times we don't give them enough opportunities. It's like either come to the show or go stream it. But you may have a diehard fan that's done those things. Give them more opportunities to support you, because you can do it in ways that doesn't feel like you're asking for handouts, but it's like, oh, you are a diehard fan. We wanted to let you know we're going to start this, like our band is Small Town Poets, the Small Town Poets Vault. And every week we're going to put something new that we haven't released in there, whether it's an old track or a song idea or a video, and only you will have access to it. I think artists can really have success with that. And I think I mentioned Radiohead earlier. I think that's sort of what they're doing. They're not charging for it. But for them, I think it's really been a matter of like, someone like them, it's not like, yes, it hurts their business to lose a tour. They'll make it up next year when the tour can happen. For them, it's probably more about the lost mind share of like, oh, they were going to release something new, but now it's delayed. It's a way for them to really still build that fan connection and people getting excited about their catalog and just them as artists. But, it wouldn't surprise me if they added a subscription, but I don't think they will. They just release so much content on their website. But it's been one of those things where it's like, yeah, this is an artist on a major label that's getting it, because so much of the music business has been about protecting music assets and not letting the fans in behind the curtain and see what really happens. Yeah,
it's like when Grant Cardone was on the show, we kind of jokingly called his episode "Why Artists Are Starving," because he's a billionaire and he knows how to make money, and so we brought him on thinking that he would give us some good advice, and he did. What he said is, the reason artists are starving is because they don't collect money. He's like artists try to attract money, but they don't collect it. He's like, the reason I got 1 billion bills is because I stack paper all day long. And that's all I do is stack paper. And he said artists don't do that. Artists want to put a hat on the ground and play their song and have an emotional connection with somebody, and this organic connection, and they like, oh, it's touched my heart, and they come there and they put $1 or $20 bill in the hat. And that's what makes a lot of artists comfortable. They feel that's a fair transaction. But they don't have like a record label anymore to go after the money and be ruthless and and just pull the money in, right? And so they don't want to be that person. But it's kind of like, I think this whole ethical artist thing is valuable, but it's also really harmful to the well-being of the financial condition of artists. And how do you get over yourself and not throw away your values as an artist? Or like, do you just go hire a manager to just be the bad cop and just go get all your money? Like, I mean, it's kind of hard. And I think maybe for some people it's going to be different. Like some people will never be able to.
I don't think it's unethical to get paid for what you do. You know, I mean,
no.
The savvy artists have always had that emotional connection and gotten paid because it is the music business. And, you know, companies like CD Baby, I appreciate the fact that, you know, you are training artists to kind of be both, to share their dreams and to share their interaction with people in a way that's true to them as creators of music, but also how to monetize the fruits of their labor, you know.
Yeah, it's a challenge, especially for artists, because we make music and we want people to have an emotional connection with what we make. And at times it can feel like going, oh, by the way, can you give me money for that? Feels like it kind of breaks the romance of the vibe of the song. And like, now it's like, oh, you're just somebody, it changed our relationship. So I can see that, but I think especially we could get way in the weeds with it today, as far as like some of the programs I've seen artists set up online that actually do a great job of asking that, where they've built these funnels where it starts with great videos targeting audiences on Facebook, and people that make it through and have clearly shown interest get something else, and then something else, and finally funnels them down to something where they're actually given a pitch for a sale.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's things like that artists are doing that are very effective, and that I know several of them that are making very nice livings from it. And it's work. Part of it is work. You got to go set all that stuff up, and you got to have the right content, and you got to understand where you connect with people. But that's, you know, if you want to make a living, it is going to be work.
I'll tell you what, it's funny. I saw a live band one time.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was Eric Tesmer, and his girlfriend was in the back at the merch counter, and Eric was just destroying this guitar solo, and he was just walking through the crowd and everything. And then, you know, she's a pretty girl, and she had this big basket, and she just starts walking through the crowds like donation, you know, but it wasn't like, it was fun. It was, so I guess it's kind of like, it's like dating a little bit, like asking somebody out. And you don't want to, when you go to ask somebody out, you know, you don't want it to seem disingenuine, you know, and like it's a line or a pickup line or something. But really, you're just trying to get them to go on a date. And it's not that you're fooling them, but you don't want to trigger like, oh, you're a trickster, or you're a scammer, or you're sly, right?
Yeah.
And some people are trying to be sly. I mean, that's the truth. Some people are trying to trick you and get your money and take away something from you that you really is not as valuable as their music or whatever. There are people that are in that situation. But like, I think it's just a matter of figuring out how to build genuine connections with people and having a fair and honest transaction. And it's, you know, to do it, to describe it starts sounding like filthy marketing or filthy business practices, you know, but I don't know.
But,
well, I mean,
you know,
once again, I mean, I came up through the 70s and all that, when the record companies, as you know, were, you know, they definitely got you through the distribution stream, and they did their job. If you were one of those lucky ones who actually sold records, they took probably an unfair share of the money to do that for you, but they did have the distribution system. And to be honest, a lot of the major labels still have these major distribution systems even today that they could put you through. However, I don't think that it was ever dishonest. Like Frank Zappa years ago would say, hey, if you want to see me next year, you got to buy a ticket to my concert and you got to buy my album, because that's what's funding this stuff. I don't come out on the road unless I can afford to pay these musicians, unless I can afford to pay the studio to record the records. So I think it's always authentic when an artist produces music. I think it's also necessary that they have a business head. That's just been my thing.
Yeah. I think the era of I'm just this diamond in the rough and someone's going to discover me is over. Even if you don't have that big of a business mind, they're still going to want to see that you've taken care of some business, that you've it's too easy online for you to get things rolling. So no matter what your career goals are as an artist, people expect that you can make things happen on your own in advance. They're not looking to start something from scratch. They're looking to, if you are looking for a manager, a booker, or want to sell your soul to a label, they're going to look for they're going to want to see that work has been put in. They're not interested in building something from scratch. They want to take what you've built and made it bigger and get a lot of the action out of it. So I think for artists, it's just important that you gotta be able to understand that you got to be able to not afraid to ask for money. But I think what's important is that not all the people interacting with your music are in the same spot. So if you aren't providing enough opportunity for your diehard fans, the people that are hanging on everything you do, there's probably missed revenue there. I would start there. It's like, give them more opportunities to buy into the experience of you and your music, and then move backwards from there and make sure that you're properly communicating with people that are in different places and opening things up as they become more and more towards that, move towards that diehard fan category. Because usually that's where the missed opportunity is. Artists are just speaking to all their fans as if they're the same and in the same place. And they're thinking, I don't want to ask for people to support me. We just met. They just heard our song last week. I'm like, well, don't ask them. Ask the people that have been around for years and are dying for new music. That's the people. And there's easy tools to help you segment your audience that way.
And one thing too that Grant writes about in a lot of his books, I think he mentioned it on the interview, is he said, go where the money is. Like there are actually places that you can play where there's no money. There's no money to make there. It's not the right people, or they're drinking too much, or they're or whatever it is. There's bad places to play, and I think looking for opportunities like where there's business money. Businesses have budgets now. Maybe they don't, but they used to have budgets, right? And I think hopefully economic recovery is on the comeback soon, but. Any thought on that?
We had a corporate gig scheduled for next month that was going to pay for our next record.
Yeah.
and it got canceled, and I was like, oh man, we were like literally a week away from getting the deposit before it got canceled. And I was like,
how would you suggest getting a corporate gig, or maybe a college circuit gig, or something that pays in the thousands instead of in the hundreds for an artist?
Well, corporate gigs, there's a lot of different things that could, if you're going to do corporate gigs, chances are you're going to have to play some covers. That wasn't the case for this gig that we had coming up, and it was only a half-hour time slot. I literally paying all our travel. I was going to just fly in. We didn't even need to rehearse to play a half-hour music, just sound check and play. So I think part of it is with corporate gigs is you got to look in the places where you're not used to looking. And for artists, we've been trained, go get the club booker at the club that has all the artists that are also competing for that time slot. I've noticed this with like city gigs as well. I live in a smaller town outside of Portland, Oregon, and I've noticed that it's we have this classic Main Street. It's like Mayberry. I've noticed for like the events they have downtown, they get the same couple artists every time, and one of them does original music, and I'm sure they're getting paid because the city has a budget. And it's just because the city doesn't know musicians. They don't know who to ask, and they found somebody that works who probably approached them, and so they keep going to that well. So a lot of times it is with a company, it's like, okay, here's a company. It's a larger company. I know they do company events or parties around the holidays, or they just have they met their goals. We're going to throw a big party. They have money. And if you know somebody that works there, or just call up and ask, a lot of times you can find your way in. And if you do a good job, they'll keep going to that well and pay you because they don't know anybody else. They're not going to go find out who the next cool band is. That's not their job. Their job is to put on some corporate event. The other thing is people that put on conferences and things like that. I know a band that a lot of their fans were into anime, and they ended up becoming a huge thing on the anime convention and the cosplay circuit. And once somebody got them and had a good experience, everybody wanted them. And so a lot of these people work counterintuitive to what we've been told as musicians is how it works with the club. And it's just a different world. And so there's a lot of opportunity and money. My friend, or actually the keyboard player in our band, he just started an event band that was geared. It was all covers, but it was geared towards these kind of high dollar corporate events. They were like 2 weeks out from going to do a $30,000 gig in Jamaica, and all this hit, and it got canceled.
No.
But that's the kind of money that and all it is playing covers. And it's not like you're thinking covers of I'm going to go play, just sit at the bar while people drink and play Wagon Wheel and Don't Stop Believing. This is like a real solid, top-notch professional performance, just happens to be cover songs. And it pays really well. So there's opportunities in those areas that it might look different on how you play and what you play, but if it can help build your craft, make you a better artist and musician because you have to learn more music, and it's paying the bills big time and allowing you to make music more, I'm all for that.
Sometimes I kind of run into, like the rockier bands will be like, that corporate gig, that's not. Or they just can't get out of their own way to do what it takes to have a corporate gig where you got to be super tight. The singing's got to be amazing. You got to have the production stuff, as you said, because, you're playing for Oracle, in a ballroom, something like that.
Yep.
So you can't just, slink on stage in your blue jeans and kind of, improvise your way through the whole thing. So there's that two things, which, that is a good way to make money because those paydays are immense. But you got like everything else, you have to work for it. You can't just go from the club to a corporate gig. There's no difference,
Yeah. But I think for artists, it's a matter of understanding that those things happen in the world, and if you recognize it, most artists aren't looking for it and don't know, and you just with a few phone calls, you could possibly be on your way to some steady revenue that you had been turning a blind eye to before. Now, obviously right now, those things aren't being scheduled, but as the world starts opening back up again, that's an opportunity that's out there.
And what I was going to do, I just moved to LA, where I moved where the money was, right? On purpose. And I printed up some cards, and I go outside of my comfort zone all the time. I go to corporate events. I go to places where there are no musicians on purpose. And I made like a card that is like, I'm just pass it out to everybody that I talk to. Yeah. I'm just the cool rock star musician that's at this business party. Right. And nobody else is there like me. And people love that crap. They love it. It's like, oh man, look at this guy, man. He's like a guitarist. He's a rocker, I'm going to hang out. Let's go have some drinks, bro. And then you go out and you talk to him, and it's like the director of marketing for this tech company. Be like, hey, yeah, man, I do all kinds of music. I know all kinds of cool people. And if, maybe we could do your Christmas party this year and just blow that thing up, man, and just rock it out. Or you just got to make connections with people outside of the music business. Everybody has this like, I talk about this sometimes, like the music business is like a 50-gallon barrel full of gerbils, and an opportunity is like a Cheeto, and they drop I was like, oh, we got a gig, and everybody's just chewing each other's arms and legs off just to try to get to this Cheeto. And like, I'm over here swimming around in a bag of Cheetos at this corporate party. And you know what I mean? So it's kind of
well, I like what you said about the idea of approaching these people. It's not just a matter of them going, oh, I'm looking for a band and I don't know a band. It's like, you're the rock and roll guy saying, we can turn that lame Christmas party into the thing everybody talks about for the entire year. Let us come do a show. And suddenly they're like, holy crap, I didn't know that was a possibility. So a lot of these people don't even realize, oh, I could actually have a cool band. And then they go and, okay, I went and talked to my boss, and I know it's a tight budget, but will $10,000 do it for you guys? And
you're just like, well, that's a little bit small. Let me
I'll talk to the guys. We'll get back to you. And they're like, okay, well, maybe I can get them up to 15. Yeah, that'd probably be best, you know? So I think it's a different world. And it's a definitely one of those things that when you start thinking how the dots connect, most people are still trying to play that club game, and clubs are great. And that's where a lot of times you can go get music fans. But if you want to get steady paying gigs that, you know, make the revenue from money,
and it's a real audience.
Music,
it's a real audience. And a lot of times, if you can play in front of a convention, I played my first gig this year at the Westin Bonaventure, downtown LA, had these giant skyscrapers behind me, and I'm just playing instrumental guitar stuff in the background and in front of 200 people. All of them had businesses, all of them had money. I've gotten 2 gig offers already, but I can't go play anywhere anymore. But it's like just that little thing, and it's all of a sudden I'm in front of all these people. And it's like I think people get into this idea, especially with social media, where like all of their fans are on social media. Oh, we got to go talk to the fans, right? Mm-hmm. But maybe what you got to do is you need to go make the fans. Yeah. Like, don't worry. I mean, I'm not saying neglect the fans you have, but like acquisition is the most important part of any business, customer acquisition. Yeah. And like, you always need to keep the customers flowing into the system. And the best way to do that is get in front of a giant audience at a convention in front of 5,000 people and get paid for it. And bam, you're golden.
Well, of course, we don't know what the coronavirus is going to do to that scenario. I mean, we're in an evolution, and everyone has to figure out how they're going to work with it. I don't know in the San Francisco area how many clubs are still going to be open when this is over. I don't know how many clubs are going to want crowds. Maybe they'll open the bar up with social distancing, but they're not going to want a bunch of sweaty people together crowding around the stage. So some of the things that you've been talking about, Kevin, as far as evolving our view, and of course that's what Matt and I have been trying to talk about too, is evolving our view to how we, make fans, make friends, generate revenue, build communities differently. Because, I mean, I've had offers for corporate gigs because I played a crappy bar because somebody who happens to be a marketing person at, a big company happened to be there with their buddies, That's probably gone. So it's a matter of, evolving how we reach out and how we build these audiences. It's going to be interesting,
One thing that's been happening that's I've seen multiple artists talking about getting this is that they've been getting corporate gigs in the virtual world. So they've been doing live streams over Zoom for employees of a company that's trying to do an e-social happy hour. He's one of them. On the next episode of our podcast, I actually interviewed him, but he goes under the name Henry Invisible. But he's live streaming on Facebook all the time. But he just had some people like, dude, I'm doing this corporate party, e-social. Will you come live stream? And so they'll be like talking, then they'll kick to him. He'll stream a couple songs. They'll kick back, and he's been getting paid quite nicely. So even that can evolve at some level.
Yeah, that's funny. The drummer in one of the bands I'm in, her husband, who's a guitar player, just got a gig, I guess today or yesterday, to do that, which was to play to a coffee get together at some big corporation via Zoom.
Yeah. So yeah, it's interesting. But yeah, I think that you bring up a good point about when we start opening things back up. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be challenging. Some venues won't be there. Here in my area, started hearing about like a particular bar that didn't have bands, but it was a popular spot here in the area, saying we just aren't coming back. And so that's going to start happening more and more the longer this lasts. Owning a venue is a tough business, even when things are good.
Oh yeah.
Take a couple months off, and it's bad news.
We just had something open in my area where it was unbelievable because it was an outdoor venue by the beach in Pacifica. They were paying super good amounts of money to have bands play, and we're like, oh man, this is awesome. It was basically a restaurant and a music venue, so everybody's like cramming in to get that gig. It's like Matt's box of gerbils or whatever, and then of course the health crisis hits. That's done. Don't know if they're going to be able to afford to come back. So it's just kind of like, oh man, we just had somebody who was actually paying good money for entertainment, and poof.
But when things do start coming back, I feel like as artists, one, it's going to be challenging to understand when the right moment is to start hitting the gas pedal again, because there is going to be this wave of like people starting to open and not have any bookings.
Yeah.
But also, I feel like independent artists will have the advantage because the crowd sizes are going to be limited. So you can't have a band that's going to draw 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 people. It's going to be like focused on, hey, we just need to get our venue open, and we need to have bands playing and get some excitement and energy around it. So I feel like there's going to be this sweet spot that gets hit where independent artists will have an advantage to snag some gigs, assuming they're ready and not jumping the gun and irritating people that are still trying to figure out how to keep the lights on. But also understanding when people are like, okay, we canceled everything, but now we can start booking again. We have nothing. What can you do this Friday night?
Yeah, that's a good point. I hadn't thought about that because, you're right. The venues, you would think the venues would go, oh man, we got to cram this place and make all the lost money. But you're right. If somebody goes, yeah, I can get 500 people in your club, which would have been the pre-crisis thing.
Yeah.
Now it's like, if you could get 75 or 50,
nothing more, nothing less.
No, this is a good advantage for bands that don't have any draw. So be like, listen, man, I know you don't want your club to be full, but my band's pretty average, and we don't really draw that many people.
I love that. I'm looking for average bands.
Yeah, we don't want a super famous person.
I don't think we were saying that, Matt.
No, you know what? It's interesting because there's some interesting storylines here, because it's like what the club is going to be looking for may not be a full house, but it might be some good storylines like, hey, we can come. I've got a connection at the local news. They'll come do a story about your venue being open again and get some shots of us playing. We're an energetic rock band. We'll get 30 of our closest friends there, and let's make this a celebration about your venue. I mean, that's something where it's like, okay, it's a way to bring the artist into the story of the venue and turn it into something that's more than just, can we get a gig?
Well, once again, I think the point here, because that's a good point too, it's thinking beyond what you'd normally, I am artist, I write songs, I get on guitar, I play gig. I mean, because having the marketing moxie to go, oh, maybe I should call Channel 4 and see that the local bar is opening up and our band's in it, and we get all this loop going where people are excited about it. I mean, that would be that's an awesome tactic.
Yeah.
I just want a T-shirt that says I have marketing moxie on it. That's pretty awesome. That's some good that flows really well.
Yeah.
I like that.
I should have trademarked that right away.
Yeah.
But Kevin, what are you on to happier subjects? What are you and how are you and your band managing the creative process? I know you were going to work on a record before you got your album paying gig inked, but there's been a lot of ways for bands to work now when in different places. What's been the most successful process for your band?
Well, for us, we've been doing it for years because I live in the Northwest, but the band's actually based out of Atlanta. And one of the guys lives in Florida and one of the guys lives in North Carolina. When we were doing it full time and we're back in our major label days, we all lived in Atlanta and Nashville and that was home base. But so we've been gotten into a pattern of writing and recording remotely for many years. So, we'll, and the way our band typically writes is conducive to that as well. It's normally like one guy shares a music idea, the other guy puts a melody to it, then we start building it out, then the whole band starts getting in on it. So for us, we've just been exchanging files. And the funny thing is once this hit, and this was kind of my indication, bringing it back to CD Baby, that this may actually be a boom for us, not a bust while this happens, is that right when this hit and everyone was staying home, a couple of the guys, they're less engaged in the process than myself and one of the others. We're suddenly like all in. Let's use this time to write and record. And, they're normally there along for the ride. It's not like they're not present, but we've been on video chat almost every day, talking to each other, exchanging ideas. And so for us, it's really been a time of like really refining that workflow. But for us, that's how we've always been a band that's written like someone has a music idea and melody idea, and then we start building off of it. So when we are together, we try to maximize our time by like jamming on some ideas and really working things out. Just someone throws out an idea and us working on it, recording it all, taking it home so we can cut it up, turn it into Pro Tools sessions and build this recording off of it. And then, based on what we're doing, sometimes we'll end up at a studio and track some stuff together, or we do it individually. Lately, the songs we've been working on have been all individual anyway. It's been helpful that our keyboard player's son is an extremely talented up-and-coming producer. And so he's been, for the more recent stuff, really engineering and producing, and it's made it a lot easier. So like we did a tour back in December, and every night in the hotel room, we had this portable recording studio we were setting up. I was recording with, this has become pretty handy, the Strymon Iridium. I've been using some. So like we had this whole rig that we just pull out, set up in the hotel room, track guitars all night, get up, pack it all up, move on to the next town and record where we can and just make it happen. So I think for us, it's really just recognizing the opportunity and making sure we're not wasting it. And for me, that's always been my focus because we're not together as much as I'd like. But when we are, I've got video cameras rolling. I've got usually a photographer. I've got my camera. I'm just trying to capture as much content as I can to use over time while we're away.
What would you say the most valuable thing as a musician that you've gained from working at CD Baby?
The most valuable thing I'd say is that there are more genres and artists having success in places that you never imagined. And it's still happening, even with the internet and YouTube and all this stuff where we see, okay, yeah, people are YouTube artists, people are having success, but it's so crazy to see how artists can find their niche and really, really make something happen. And quite honestly, sometimes the music isn't all that great. And that's why, to me, when artists go, hey, listen to my music and tell me if it's worth anything, I'm like, I'm not a music journalist, so my opinion is worthless. I mean, I'm not somebody that when getting into the music business, I always thought, oh, being an A&R person would be great. And I'm like, that's not my gift to sit there and listen to a bunch of music and go, that's good and that's not good. But there's some of the most popular music on the planet I don't like. So it's like the idea that that you have to be this perfectly packaged pop artist to make it is just not true. So I mean, I've seen that across so many genres with people that it comes down to, do you have the ability to connect with individuals and connect with them around your music? I know some people that are making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year off their music, people actually listening to their music. And I listened to it and I was like, this isn't that great in that genre. But somehow they've connected with people and they've built an audience and they continue to build a catalog, and it just works.
Well, first off, as a music journalist, I could say that you shouldn't listen to music journalists anyway.
Yeah.
If you need a music journalist to tell you that your music's good or bad, then maybe it's time to take up needlepoint. I don't know. But you're right. I mean, one of the things that I think was good about the implosion of the labels was that, you know, there were a limited amount of, you know, highways that major labels put rock artists on, and there were rules. You know, you're always chasing the hit of somebody else. You know, maybe you should have an acoustic guitar in your record. Maybe you should have a tambourine. Let's do this. Blah. And now it is opened up to where you can be, you know, playing a cajon on a pogo stick with a you know, kazoo, and there might be, and if you're charismatic enough, there might be people to follow you, which is awesome. You know, it's awesome. Yeah.
That, I think that's one of those things when I started at CD Baby that just blew my mind, because and it's also not just connecting on music, but it's connecting on community. So there was this artist that was selling an enormous amount of CDs. This is way back in the day, but selling an enormous amount of CDs because all her music was written about sailing. So all these people in the sailing community, that was like their favorite artist. Yep. The recordings weren't great, but it's somebody that's singing about their life experiences and they loved it.
Christopher
so it's like
Cross would be big in that too.
Yeah. Oh yes. We would
sailing. Take me away.
Yeah, we would. Oh yeah. So some of it is that as well, that the idea that it's not just about the music, but it's about the other connections that you might have that form around the music as well. Like I mentioned, that artist getting all those anime gigs. It's like there's this commonality, and now, you're an artist as well. We have this commonality. Now I'm a fan of your music. So there's lots of ways in.
Well, we're at the top of the hour. Yeah. I told Kevin's got another interview or a meeting or something at the top of the hour, and he's probably deserves a bathroom break. So we're gonna call it here. But Kevin, thank you so much for coming on the show. I want to give everyone a chance for the last words. Michael.
Hey, thanks, Kevin. It's great to have you on. It's great to get your perspective as a musician and the CD Baby thing. And 10-ton salute to you guys there for putting out so much. You know, as a music journalist, it's, you know, knowledge and sharing knowledge is close to my heart. You guys do an awesome job of that. So bravo to you and your teams.
Oh, thank you.
And Kevin, last words?
I just say, you know, it's a crazy time we're living in right now, but don't miss the moments to actually do some good for yourself, for your music, and take the time to be creative. And you know, artists always ask me, how do you have time to do stuff? You got a full-time career, you got kids, and it's like, you got to cut out the things that aren't important to you. And I think right now we're all simplifying our lives, and it's a perfect time to fill it in with things that you do find that have value and get creating and so.
Amen to that.
Let's make some music.
Well, make some music. That's right. All right. Well, thank you so much, everyone.
Right.
Kingdom of Rock out, and we have. See you guys at the Zoom meetup this weekend. Check the details on the Facebook page. See you guys.
See ya.